tonight, as the Biden administration pushes ahead of $1 billion in weapons for Israel.
The pain for the hostages. I reiterate that there is no greater mitzvah than redeeming the captives.
The focus remains on bringing hostages home. Plus,
Putin is ramping up yet another offensive against Ukraine.
As a Russian resurgence takes place on the battlefield, a look at how the world is working to support Ukraine.
Well, make my day, pal.
President Biden lays out his debate demands, and Donald Trump responds. The 2024 latest. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Well, it's a done deal. Joe Biden and Donald Trump agreed to debate with a date set next month. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And from the CBN studio in Washington, I'm Tara Mergener. Over the course of just a few hours today, the traditional presidential debate model was thrown right out the window as President Biden and former President Donald Trump agree to hold two campaign debates.
June 27th is the date for the first debate hosted by CNN and the second hosted by ABC on September 10th. Caitlin Burke joins us now with more on the countdown to the first presidential face-off, just a little more than a month away. Caitlin, what played out today, to be clear, is not how debates are normally decided.
John, Tara, no. The way this all unfolded today basically upends a decades-old tradition of 3 fall debates organized by the Bipartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. Now, this was a condition set by President Biden. This morning, his campaign sent a letter to the commission announcing he will only participate in debates hosted by news organizations. Several reasons for that include a desire to hold the debates much sooner than the dates the organization proposed. They want it to be just the 2 candidates and a moderator with no live audience for Trump to build off of. And finally, the Biden campaign didn't like the way the commission handled the 2020 presidential debates. After sending out that letter, President Biden took to X.
Lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
The dates have now been picked. First, CNN extending an invitation for a debate on June 27th, which both candidates have accepted. ABC quickly followed up with an offer to host a debate September 10th. That date also accepted. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "It is my great honor to accept the CNN debate against crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States and a true threat to democracy on June 27th. Likewise, I accept the ABC News debate against crooked Joe on September 10th. Timing was one of the major reasons for ignoring the traditional debate model. With so many participating in early voting, it's important to the candidates to get in front of the American public as soon as possible. John, Tara.
All right, CBN's Caitlin Burke. We're starting sooner than we have ever before. So with us now is Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections. He's also a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, welcome to you. So the mudslinging has already started. Both Biden and Trump had previously said that they were open to debates. Today, it's confirmed. So, Nathan, why now? What moved the dial for them to commit today?
Well, first, I'm a little skeptical that it's all a done deal, right? It just all seems a little bit too easy. I feel like there is still time for someone to take issue with one aspect of the debate. They don't like this, they don't like that. But here we are. And I think from the Trump campaign, you see someone who is anxious to debate someone who they think is not up for the job and physically unable to debate or hold the job of president. And from the Biden campaign, I think you see an opportunity. They see an opportunity to show that he is up for the job and to be on a big stage like that. And for those viewers who say, well, why have the debates always been so late? Well, typically they're after the conventions when the parties officially nominate candidates. In this case, it would be July and mid-August when Democrats have their convention. But now with presumptive nominees, there's this appetite, I guess, for us to start this sooner rather than later.
You know, Nathan, I feel like I know the answer to this already, but what should we expect on the debate stage based on the tone of their volleys today, with Biden seemingly baiting Trump, saying he's free on non-trial Wednesdays, and Trump calling Biden the worst debater?
It will be interesting to see what tact they take. I think with Trump, we know that he is not, he's going to come full force, right? With Biden, I think we'll see if he tries to match Trump on the kind of insults or if he tries to take a more statesman approach. One key thing to watch, though, is the tone coming from Republicans and Trump. Right now, they are setting the bar so low for Biden that if Biden just shows up, stands up behind a podium for 90 minutes, then he's going to clear that bar. It's the same thing before the State of the Union. Biden cleared a very low bar that Republicans set for him. And so that will be one piece to watch, because Biden, I think, is more up for this than what some Republicans believe he is.
So, Nathan, after Maryland and West Virginia settled some scorecards in Tuesday's primaries, AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby, touted how every candidate they've backed has won their race, including 52 Democrats, claiming that being pro-Israel is good policy and good politics. Nathan, should that be seen as somewhat of a warning shot for progressives who are less sympathetic to Israel?
Well, I think it is. Well, first, you'd rather win races than lose races. I think it's partially about the policy, but it's also about the amount of money that's being spent. AIPAC, through United Democracy Project or other affiliated groups, have come into these races with serious money, often with millions of dollars, in order to impact these races. And so that doesn't mean that the policy is wrong, but they have influence these races in a significant way to help boost their candidates and get them over the top. I think they're going to continue to be influential. A key race to watch moving forward is in New York with Congressman Jamal Bowman, who's considered kind of a member of the squad. He is going to be a target from AIPAC and affiliated groups, and he is in a real risk of losing his primary.
All right, Nathan Gonzalez with Inside Elections, thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be interesting, right?
No doubt.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Well, turning now to the war in Ukraine, where a new Russian offensive is testing Kyiv's military limits.
That's right. And Moscow is pushing towards the city of Kharkiv, forcing Ukrainian troops to divert their attention to an area they reclaimed in 2022. And now, under immense pressure, President Volodymyr Zelensky has canceled all upcoming foreign trips. Today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced the U.S. is sending $2 billion in additional aid to Ukraine.
We will provide an additional $2 billion in foreign military financing for Ukraine. And we put this together in a first-of-its-kind defense enterprise fund.
The aid will supply more arms to Ukraine and strengthen its ability to produce its own weapons. The funds will also help Ukraine buy military equipment from other countries. This is in addition to the supplemental aid package Congress passed just last month.
Well, CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas recently returned from Ukraine. He joins us now for more analysis. George, you've traveled to Kharkiv. You know that city and its significance. Can you talk, though, about the significance of this Russian offensive?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to look at a map of Ukraine and you look at the northeast area of Ukraine, very close to the Russian border, you've got Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. And what the Ukrainians have been doing in the last couple of weeks, they've been launching these wave after wave of attacks right on that border region, trying to penetrate Ukrainian forces. And in the last 48 hours, they managed to do so. But the reporting from Kyiv today, in fact, just a couple of hours ago, President Volodymyr Zelensky took to X and basically said that they have rushed troops to the region. They have the place somewhat under control. It seems that there is still, movement by the Russians to break through those defense lines. But it looks like things are somewhat under control. And I think in the next few days, we will see the Ukrainians launch a counteroffensive to push the Russians out of that region. But it is, no doubt, the most significant offensive that Moscow has managed to operate since the war started more than 2 years ago.
George, do you think Russia actually has the manpower to completely overrun Ukraine's second largest city?
No. I mean, they don't. Fortunately, they don't. I mean, they're trying to look. We have a brief window, if I may use that phrase, a brief window before American weapons begin flowing into Ukraine after Congress passed the $61 billion supplemental war funding for the ongoing efforts there in Ukraine. So I think what you're seeing is that the Russians are taking advantage of this brief window when they know that the American weapons are going to start flowing in. Obviously, you know, Secretary Blinken talking about an additional funding to rush ammunitions and tanks and so forth to the region. And again, Moscow realizes that they have this window and they want to take advantage of this. So that's why you are seeing a sort of a multi-front approach by the Russians to try and hit Ukraine from different positions, from the northeast, from the east, as well as from the south, to try and gain as much advantage by this summer. I think the next couple of weeks between now and midsummer are going to be very, very critical for the Zelensky government, and I think you're going to see more and more attempts by the Russians to try and take more ground.
George, just a few seconds left, or about a minute left. There's reporting that one Ukrainian commander said that the Russians simply walked into Kharkiv. Did this offensive, by chance, catch the Ukrainians by surprise? Yeah,
John, in some sense it did, because I think what the Ukrainians have been saying for quite some time, with all of this wrangling in Washington, D.C., they needed the air defense, they needed the missile capability, and they needed the permission from the U.S. to hit, for example, Belgorod, which is right on the northeast quadrant of Ukraine on the Russian side. They've been saying, let us use American-made weapons to target straight into Russian territory. Obviously, this is a big game changer if this were to happen. The Biden administration has been saying, under no circumstances can you be using American-made weapons to be launched into Russian territory. That changes the ball game, so to speak. And so what happened in this northeast quadrant was that the Ukrainians, in essence, didn't have the weaponry and the wherewithal to defend itself, and so it found itself, flat-footed in some cases. But I think you're going to see that change in the next couple of hours to a couple of days.
All right, CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas. George, thank you for your personal insights there.
You're welcome. Sure.
Well, the Biden administration is moving ahead with the sale of $1 billion in new weapons to Israel. The announcement comes 1 week after the White House paused a bomb shipment over concerns they would be used in Rafah. The IDF is continuing its operations in the Hamas stronghold, despite international warnings that it will trigger a humanitarian disaster. The UN estimates some 450,000 Palestinians evacuated Rafah in the last week. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing pressure at home to decide who will rule post-war Gaza. Today, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant warned he would not support permanent military control over Gaza and urged leaders to find a viable alternative to Hamas. All right, up next, inflation is falling. What it means for your wallet when Faith Nation returns.
Welcome back. Encouraging signs for the economy. Inflation cooled ever so slightly last month, up 0.3% in April. A little lower than expected, though. Still, inflation has been running 3.4% higher than last year, and that remains well above the Federal Reserve's target of 2%, which could mean it could be some time, or months rather, before the Fed starts to cut interest rates.
All right, and with that, let's bring in Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate. So, Mark, if it could be months before the Fed cuts these interest rates, we're hearing possibly September now. What does that mean in practical terms for we, the consumer?
Yes, that's all of us, right? And so higher for longer is probably a good phrase to keep in mind about the outlook for interest rates. And even if the Fed does, as you indicated, start cutting rates as early as September of this year, rates may be higher for longer. So we're not talking about a full-fledged retreat from higher ground with these rates that are currently elevated. So the takeaway from that is that we'll have this strong medicine in place for some time to come. That means borrowing costs will remain elevated at some level. The good news for savers, those who either aren't saving or need to save, and that's the majority of Americans who need to do a better job with that, the opportunity to get higher yields on savings will also persist. So it's not all bad.
So, Mark, many Americans are saying they're near their breaking point and are really reining in spending now. And as a result, retail sales took the biggest hit, falling by 1.2% last month. How significant is that, and what's the potential fallout?
The headline retail sales were unchanged in the reading that we just got, and excluding autos were little changed. And I do believe that, we have to think about a range or variety of consumers out there. Very often the phraseology is the consumer, but we need to think about millions of different kinds of consumers. So those who are hurt the most by these affordability challenges are obviously those at the lower end of the wage and wealth spectrum, as well as those sort of in the middle. And then high borrowing costs are keeping people from buying some things where in the past they might have leaned on credit card debt. And we've seen recently that both credit card debt and delinquencies are moving into a range that are cause for concern. So what I would say is that, there's a reason why McDonald's is going to have a month-long promotion to have a $5 meal, is because people are cutting back on those things that are not necessities. And unless you're on the road, you don't have to eat in a restaurant. You don't have to get that $4.25 cup of coffee. And that's where people are saying, enough already. Let's eat at home more often and try to afford chicken rather than beef.
Yeah, for sure, that's affecting a lot of people, right? Well, Mark, running out of time, but do you believe financially stressed consumers and all the categories you just kind of mentioned are ushering another economic slowdown at this point?
The economy may well moderate as we get into the latter half of the year, but growth has been more robust and sustained than would have been expected. And if anything, we just had the stock market's three major averages close at new record highs. So there are some good things out there, but we need prices to stabilize and even come down further.
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate, thank you so much for your thoughts. As always, hopefully we can all get some relief sometime soon, right?
Sometime soon. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Cicada season is upon us. Why billions of these tiny insects are preparing to make their arrival.
All right, there's new information on the cargo ship that knocked down Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge in March. The dolly lost power before hitting the bridge, toppling the span and killing 6 construction workers. A report from the National Transportation Safety Board finds that 2 blackouts occurred on the ship just 10 hours before that collision. The power outages happened during maintenance, causing the crew to reconfigure the electrical system. It's unclear if those blackouts are linked to that accident.
Well, later this month, the numbers could reach into the trillions, and we're not talking about, Tara, a Washington subject often, the budget deficit.
No, it's yuck. In parts of the United States, cicadas are emerging in numbers not actually seen in decades. Not looking forward to that, right? CBN contributing correspondent Paul Petit takes us inside the world of this insect for more on what we can expect.
You may not always see them, but you can certainly hear them.
We're about to see billions of insects known as cicadas, commonly referred to as periodical cicadas because they only come out periodically every 13 or 17 years, depending on what broods you're talking about.
17 states from northwest Louisiana up through Illinois and portions of the southeast will experience what some are calling cicada-geddon. Entomologists expect the harmless but noisy insects to emerge from the ground to feed and mate during May and June.
When soil temperatures hit about 64 degrees 6 inches down on the year of an emergence, that's when they all know that's their cue to start coming out of the ground.
2024 will welcome 2 broods of cicadas, classified as 19 and 13. Certain northern states will see both, pushing the total cicada population into the trillions, something that hasn't happened since 1803.
There are a few overlapping counties there in Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, where you may see both of those emergences coming out at once, and you may have twice as many periodical cicadas.
And when it comes to the noise level of cicadas, this will give you a pretty good idea. Yeah, in full throttle, cicadas could actually be 10 decibels louder than a police siren. In fact, in one South Carolina county, officials had to tell residents to stop calling 911, reporting that alarms were going off.
Males are the only ones that make the noise, and they move into calling areas. They want to all be as loud as possible to draw in those ladies from as far out as they can.
For more insight to this rare occurrence, we turn to the author of God and the World of Insects.
The perceived conflict between science and the Bible was something that I just wanted to help bridge a gap, particularly in my field in entomology.
Josh Shoemaker, entomologist and biblical scholar, enjoys where the two fields intersect.
If you look at the covenant that God made with Noah, in that covenant, he says he's making it with Noah, but it says he's also making it with all the creatures of the earth. And so to me, when I look at that passage, it shows me that the insects are also something that's important to God.
While cicadas are often referred to as locusts, they are actually two different species. Some of the Jewish community liken the noise cicadas make to a song of liberation, much like the sound from Miriam's tambourine as she led the Hebrew women in worship after crossing the Red Sea.
Here we have these cicadas. They really have been trapped for 17 years. You know, they were in their own Egypt. They were in their own exile. They were under the ground. You know, they were in these tunnels, you know, held hostage by the ground. And when they come out, don't look at it that they are making your life miserable. Look at it that they are singing to you. There's a message. There's a liberation.
Rabbi Afson writes for the American Israelite, a Jewish newspaper in Cincinnati. His monthly column is titled Lessons for Life from Life. He believes everything we see and hear is ordained from God for a purpose, even the noise or singing from a cicada.
And that's really how we have to live our life. We have to be singing God's praises.
Paul Petit, CBN News.
An emotional reunion for man and his best friend. That is next on Faith Nation. Well, we love our man's best friend stories here, don't we?
You particularly.
I really do. So finally tonight, a North Carolina man is breathing a sigh of relief after recovering stolen belongings.
And fortunately, it all started and ended in just one day. Howard McCarter's truck was stolen from a convenience store with everything inside, including his dog, Holly. That same night, though, McCarter received news that his truck was found with Holly inside, alive and well.
Everything else is replaceable except for this girl.
He's so right.
You know, and I read he traveled 100 miles throughout the county looking for his dog in that truck, and I'm just grateful.
Well, my hat's off to him. I totally understand that.
Well, thanks for watching.